Hey everyone, it's Jim here. How you doing? Hope your Black Friday's going well. Let me just get this on the screen so you can have a look. So welcome to today's live. I've got, I thought today being Black Friday, it's not just any Friday, it's Black Friday, the largest sales day probably outside of China. So everywhere else apart from China, this is by far and away going to be the biggest selling day going, and I thought it would be useful today. I'm actually in a fairly fortunate position in that most of the clients that I work with are not really impacted directly by Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Typically, they don't tend to run promotions, so the craziness that tends to happen when you're working with clients that have Black Friday, Cyber Monday offers, it's not something that I've had to kind of experience that much. So what I thought I would do today with a little bit of, I say downtime, it's not downtime at all, but I thought I would take advantage. It's 5 o'clock here in the UK on Friday, so getting towards the tail end of my day, I thought I would just kind of dive on and do a quick YouTube live and see what's going on in terms of the kind of the sales. And I'm going to share with you a tool that I've been sort of developing in-house to give me the ability to kind of do a little bit more analysis of brands that maybe are competitors to clients of ours, but also it could be that they're competitors to clients of yours. And I just thought it would be useful to share it with you. I'm actually going to leave a link a little bit later on that will give you the ability to get hold of it for free today. So if you wanted to kind of get hold of the database, which I'm going to show you, I thought rather than just giving you a link to say, hey, here's where you can go and get it, I thought it would be useful to kind of like, if you like, get inside my head and think a little bit about what the strategy behind why I've created this database, what I use it for internally, what information it gives me, and go from there. But before we kind of get to that, I just want to kind of flick across here to show you. So one of the things I love about Black Friday, Cyber Monday is we have this anyone that knows me will know that I'm running an agency, and we typically work with Shopify stores that do between $1 and $5 million a year in revenue. That's kind of how we pitch ourselves as an agency. So if you are one of those, kind of reach out to me, let me know. I'd love to kind of be working with you for next year's Black Friday, Cyber Monday. But one of the things I thought would be quite useful to kind of show you is, so Shopify have spent some probably an inordinate amount of money developing this tool, and what this tool does is it will show you in real time. I say in real time, I mean I'm sure that there's probably an element of gamification with this, but what it will do is it will show you in real time what is going on. So what you can see in the middle, you'll be able to see that according to this, the current sort of tally is $5.28 million worth of sales per minute, and about 45,300 orders a minute, and 20 million unique shoppers. And you've got on the left hand side over here, it's showing you how many webhooks, so that's basically queries into the kind of the back end of Shopify, and how many what's going on. What I think is quite interesting, I'll see if I can zoom in on it. I don't know if it's if I can do that, but you can see here what it's showing is it's showing you different verticals and showing you whether it's up or down. I'm presuming that's up or down on this time last year. So for storage and organizations, 1.1% up, sprinkler and accessories 0.16 down, baby bottle nipples and liners. I didn't think I'd be saying the word nipples on this presentation or this live. Baby bottle nipples and liners, 0.5%. Smoke and carbon monoxide detectors down 0.33. So there's bound to be some stuff in here that is significantly up on this year versus last year. But as we're, like I said, I'm kind of in the UK. It's 5 o'clock here for me, so that basically means that it's noon in the East Coast and 9 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast. So this number here, the sales per minute, I would just expect that to kind of like ramp up as we kind of get further on and more people on the West Coast of America wake up. That basically means that everyone in the States is kind of full gas, and you should see the kind of the uplift in that sort of volume. So what you tend to find is that it tends to go in cycles. You'll tend to find that there are some quiet periods where that may happen. Yeah, so for me, again, I always kind of make a point of bookmarking this site, so bfcm.shopify.com, and watch it kind of religiously all the time. So you can see here, this is obviously the map. If you scroll it around, you know, these are effectively sales that are taking place and being shipped from, you know, like the squiggly arrows are showing you stuff that's being bought in Europe being shipped to America and vice versa, and all the stuff that's being shipped around the States as well. So as you can see here, if you look at the sort of the East Coast, it's very, very kind of active. If you look at the West Coast, less active, but that's because, as I said, people are just waking up, probably having a cup of coffee, maybe some cereal, breakfast, before they kind of get onto it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the psychology of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, right? Because I think when you look at you know, why Black Friday came into being, I mean, it was really kind of done to try and help high street brands that were struggling. I think it came in about 7 or 8 years ago. High street brands were really struggling to kind of make sales, primarily because the online world had really kicked in and taken off. So, you know, so obviously everyone was kind of doing online shopping. So that basically meant that high street shops were struggling because of that, right? So the concept of Black Friday was developed, right? Here in the UK, we have something called Boxing Day. So they have something, typically it's called Boxing Day sales. So what happens is the day after Christmas, they kind of, all the big department stores used to have big sales, and people would go rushing to the shops after Christmas to kind of buy themselves things or buy gifts for other people. But what tended to happen is that the because of the online world, I think the kind of the offline activity really kind of went flat. So what happened is that it went really flat, and they just sort of decided that Black Friday would be a good way of trying to help the kind of the offline stores. And what's tended to happen is that, first of all, they had Black Friday, then they introduced Cyber Monday, and really now, I mean, I'm sure that, you know, anyone that's kind of watching this, your inbox has probably been inundated with Black Friday offers for probably the last 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, I know mine has. It's been bombarded, and I maintain that, you know, Black Friday is usually one of the best times to see whose database you happen to be on, because that's typically the only time you ever hear from brands that you may have bought from in the past, is when they want to try and sell you something again. So for me, it's a good opportunity. I can kind of cleanse my inbox by unsubscribing from all the stuff that maybe I bought in the past, not going to buy again. And it just gives me the ability to kind of do that. So yeah, so I think, you know, if you are kind of listening in, watching in, I'd love to know kind of where you're calling in from or where you're watching from. As I mentioned, I'm kind of live on YouTube. I'm also live on LinkedIn. So if you're live on either of those, then let me know where you're kind of listening into the presentation from. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of just dive across. So as I mentioned, we've got this sort of the Shopify live globe, you know, with 4.4 million sales per minute. So in the time that it's taken me to kind of just switch across, we've kind of gone from there. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to show you my database, right? So this is something that, like I said, I've been working on for quite some time. It's been a labor of love. I've been really focusing quite heavily on trying to get as much data as possible. I've got a team of data entry people pulling information and pushing this into the database. And basically, one of the tools that I've been using quite heavily is Notion. I'll put a link on the screen to so that you can kind of know where to get Notion from. So let me see. So yeah, so obviously with Notion, what you're able to do is you're able to kind of do a lot of capturing of information and storing in databases and tables and galleries and things like that. I absolutely love Notion. Been using it for quite a while. So yeah, I think if you haven't heard of Notion before, hopefully what I'm going to show you will encourage you to want to go and use it. They do have a free version and a paid version. I pay for the advanced version. I think it's only like $5 a month. It's an amazing tool. It gives me so much information. You can collaborate with other people. So it's basically $5 per month per user. But for me, it's been invaluable to have Notion in my sort of arsenal of tools that I can kind of use. So let me just go back here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch across to my advertiser database. So as I mentioned, what I've been doing is I've been capturing information on different brands, and I've been filling in some of the blanks in terms of some of the I want to try and get a sort of a fuller picture on what their advertising strategy is kind of across the board, right? Because I think a lot of agencies that I've seen focus on just one particular channel. So they may only be a Facebook ads agency or Meta ads, or they may only be Google ads, or they may only be TikTok ads. What I've tried to do is I've tried to be more omnichannel. So I've tried to say, well, let's focus on ensuring that we've got visibility across the platforms, right? So that if somebody visits a site from, say, Meta, and then leaves there and goes and does a brand search on Google, that we've got presence on both those platforms. Similarly, if they leave Meta and then go to Microsoft, we've got visibility on those platforms, or TikTok, visibility on that platform as well. So what I've been trying to do, I mean, at the moment, I think we're up to close to 500 brands in the database, and adding, as I mentioned, I've got data entry people pushing information into the system all the time. So what I'm doing is I'm adding the information in, and I'm going to switch across to the sort of the master database to show you how it looks. So what you can see here is I've got the advertiser name, the industry that they're in, whether it's an e-commerce or lead generation business. I have actually started to add charity and not-for-profit into this list as well. The website that they have, the Facebook page that they've got, Facebook ads library. So again, I'll show you, Meta have tried to kind of to give you an element of transparency. They've tried to make it so that, anyone that's advertising, you can see their ads. And if you're a political advertiser, then it will also show you how much money was spent. And I thought it's quite interesting when the US election was on just recently, the amount of money that was being spent by all political advertisers was just like astronomical. You then have like Google ads as well, same thing. So again, in the same way that Meta have tried to be transparent, Google have tried to be transparent. I want to see if people have a YouTube presence, whether they have a presence on Instagram, they have a presence on TikTok. If they're advertising on TikTok, again, I've got a tool where I can kind of look at the information, and it'll show me what ads they run on TikTok, how much money they've spent, that sort of thing, whether they've got a LinkedIn presence, Pinterest presence. There's a third-party tool that I absolutely love called Mild, and Mild is basically, instead of you having to subscribe to all of your competitors' email lists, what you can do is you can actually just look and see what brands have got, what emails brands have been sending out, and you can receive a notification. I'll show you that as well as part of this process, whether they're on Twitter or X. So these should probably all be switched to X's. Another great tool called Built With. Built With gives me the ability to understand what the marketing technology that underpins a particular site might be. So that will tell me whether they're on Shopify, what sort of pixels they've got installed, all that sort of good stuff. I can add notes to it, tags. I then look at things like Google ratings. So typically what will happen is that if an e-commerce business is running ads online, what will happen is they may well be running either Google ratings for their store, or they might be running third-party solutions like Yotpo or Trustpilot. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to get our team to kind of pull out the information so that we can see whether they're using Yotpo or Trustpilot or Google. Personally, again, if somebody's going to be doing a lot of advertising on Google, I would always recommend to them that they run the kind of the Google review technology, because then that way I think Google kind of give that preference. I'm not saying that they don't show the others, but I think they give preference to their own technology because it's something that they can feel more confident that the data integrity is going to be good as a result of it. So yeah, that's obviously the database. You can apply filters. So like I said, I'm running at the moment. This is like all the brands in the database. You can see there's 486. But I can also apply a filter. So I've done some filters for. I've set up a separate view for personal care, apparel, supplements. If I switch across to supplements, I can see that out of the 486 brands in the database, there are 20 that are deemed to be supplements. I'll look at some of these in kind of more detail. But if I switch across to the master database, I'm going to take one of the brands that I've got in here, which is called Avrani. Now, again, so if I just sort of open that page up, so you can see, so this page is live on a live website, and once you get access to the database, you will be able to access this data yourself. But I just thought it would be useful. You won't be able to add to it, you won't be able to change it, but you will be able to kind of access it. And as I mentioned, this is a fairly significant labor of love on behalf of me and my team to make sure that we've got as much of this information visible for us. And because your friends and family online, I want to try and give the information to you as well. So you can see here, obviously, it's a beauty and personal care brand, e-commerce. That's the website. So if I click on that, that will just open up in a new link. That will show me what's going on. That tells me that they've got an annual holiday event. So they don't call it Black Friday. They've just said it's an annual holiday event. Yeah, I'm not going to go into too much critique of specific websites, but generally speaking, that's another thing I like to do. So we can see Facebook page that they have. So again, if we click on that, that will show me what they've got going on in Facebook. So they've got just over 5,000 followers. The last post on here was November the 22nd. So clearly not particularly active insofar as the stuff that they're posting for Black Friday. I would have expected a brand would be all over kind of Facebook to talk about stuff that they've got going on. Because, when all's said and done, you've got your paid media, your owned media, and your earned media. And I've always maintained, even though I'm a paid advertising guy, I don't want really to spend more money on paid advertising than you absolutely have to. So all your kind of owned and earned media are really the ones where you should focus your efforts. So things like your email list, your social media presence, those are not something that you have to necessarily pay for. I mean, I know you pay for it in terms of the time and effort that you put into it, but I think it's useful if you can understand kind of how you can leverage, like I said, that owned and earned media to help drive and fill the kind of the funnel for your paid media, so that your paid media is not going on such cold audiences. You can kind of warm them up a little bit using your owned and earned media as well. So that's the Facebook. So within Facebook, the ads library, I mentioned there that Facebook have this sort of transparency thing where they'll go, right, okay, I'm going to give you the ability to see what's going on. So as I mentioned, you can say, okay, specifically which country. I always leave it to kind of all, so that will show me which countries in total. You can see the different categories. So you've got two sort of ad category types. You've got all ads, which is all advertisers, and then you've got issues, elections, or politics. So again, I'll just show you, just for argument's sake, if we type in Donald Trump, just for argument's sake, Donald J. Trump, we can see specifically he's got no ads running at the moment. Yeah, but if we look at that, we've got so you've got nothing going on in the last 7 days. So that's not a good example, but we can see that where are we? Yeah, so let's take off the active ads. So you've got nothing going kind of live at this particular point in time. Yeah, so you get a breakdown of like the location that he advertised, the age groups that he advertised in, the amount of money that was spent. So you can see he spent 13.7 million, which paled into insignificance compared to what the other candidates spent, but that's clearly kind of didn't influence the outcome. And obviously these are the ads that were running. So again, you can kind of see specifically, like how many ads use this creative. You've got various calls to action, so on. So I'm not going to sort of dwell too much on the specific political ads. I think I'd be more interested in how it kind of focuses for e-commerce and Black Friday. So let's go back to Avrani. So as I mentioned, each advertiser in the database has got a page ID and their sort of main country. So if it's the US, then obviously US would be the country ID. So the way my database works is I've got some hidden properties. So you can see I've got a sort of formula here which will pull the information. So all I need to do is populate the country and the ID. And people go, well, where do I get the ID from? Right, so I'm going to show you where that comes from. Yeah, so let me just do this. So this shows you kind of where they're advertising. So this is Avrani in terms of what they're advertising on. But if I go to the page, so in other words, how do I find the information? On the About page, there is a page transparency, and this is where you will find the page ID. So again, if I just copy that page ID, go back into my database, punch it in here, which obviously I've already done, country US, that then gives me the URL here in the formula. I just copy that, I then get that and I paste it into the ads library. And this is the page that will show me what Avrani are doing, right? So this shows me at the moment, I'm looking at everything that they've done in November. If I wanted to, I could say, okay, well, let's just do 2024. Yeah, so let me just maybe do the last week. So if I say from the 22nd through to the 29th, this will show me what ads they're running currently. So it'll show me specifically, I would guess these are the ones that are probably more your Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals and offers that they've got going on. So yeah, I mean, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for, variations in ad copy. I'm looking in variations in calls to action that they're using. I think a lot of people get sort of bogged down with the creative element, the kind of image or video that they use. But I think one of the things I've noticed is that the creative is more than just the kind of the video or the image. It's also the primary description, which is this bit here. You've then got your kind of calls to action or headlines, and and ultimately those are the sorts of things that I think if you can kind of get a combination of a good visual creative, so good image or video, along with a kind of a meaningful primary headline, primary description. I never know what the correct terminology for them is, but the kind of the words up here and then the words down here. That's probably the best way of looking at it. So if I look at that, I can see the ad details, right? It will show me what the ad looks like. It says it's got multiple versions, so it's 20% off, and then it's just a different format. So again, some of the placements that you'll see on the Facebook platform, right, require different size ads, and that's just why there's multiple variations of that. We can see obviously, what that sort of all kind of manifests it. So again, we can't see how much money they're spending, but we can definitely see how active or inactive they are, right? So that's what you can get from the Facebook ads library element. Google also has the same thing. So let me just shut down the, so Google also have the same thing. So they have the Google Ads Transparency Center. What that does is it will show, so again, you can look, at particular periods of time. So if I said, okay, show me the last 7 days. Okay. I can choose specifically which country. So let me just choose United States, because I know this particular brand is a US advertiser. I can choose specifically which platform. So you can see here, we've got Google Maps, Google Play, Google Shopping, Google Search, YouTube. I tend to kind of leave it on all platforms to begin with. And then if I sort of just start typing in the name, you can see here, Avrani Inc., United States, circa 74 ads. So they got nothing running in the last 7 days. So they're not running any ads in the last 7 days. So if I take off that filter, you can see the ads will show, right? So that tells me that they're not using Google as a platform specifically for Black Friday or Cyber Monday. They're just using Facebook for that purpose. Or maybe they don't have money. I don't know. So yeah, so to kind of grab the URL, so if I click on that, that then gives me this URL. So I can copy that, go in here and paste it into the database. So, oops, there we go. Do it that way. I haven't put their LinkedIn page. I didn't kind of go looking for that, but I can see their YouTube page. So again, this will show me. You can see that they've got 81 subscribers and 3 videos, so not particularly active on YouTube, which is for me a bit of a shame. We've got their Instagram page. So again, the sort of thing I'm looking for is what cadence they do. So they've got 76,000 followers. So for me, this is probably a bit of a wasted opportunity if they're not capitalizing on getting information, messages out to these 76,000 followers that they have. So when was that? That was like 14 weeks ago. This particular ad this particular one was done. This is 39 weeks ago. So these are the pinned ones that they have. Let me go and try and see if I can find one that's not pinned. So this is the first one that's not pinned. You can see it's got 5,499 likes and 293 comments. Yeah, so yeah, very, very appealing visually, but you know, I don't think they're capitalizing. And that was like basically the original post was 64 weeks ago. So it's over a year ago that particular post was made. This I think is a Black Friday one. So that's 2 days ago. But again, they're not capitalizing on, you know, they could be having sort of their product placement in the actual post that they're making. Yeah, so they could be doing more with that. So that's Instagram. We then have TikTok. So this is their TikTok page. And again, 26,000 followers, so reasonable. Using tinyurl, which is horrible. But yeah, and obviously on TikTok, you can sort by the latest stuff. Obviously, the 3 pin ones will always appear. So this is the most recent. You can do by popular. So this is 3.4 million. That's their most popular TikTok. Again, I've always been a bit confused because, you know, if you look at TikTok, it says 3.4 million, 1.5 million, 272,000, 1.1. I'm thinking, why isn't that one up here? Because it's obviously got more views, but I think it's based on the number of engagements rather than the actual number of views. So that probably tells me that this one had, you know, a greater engagement than this one, even though it had a lot fewer views. So that's TikTok. Then we have, again, one of my sort of secret tools is a platform called Pippi Ads. So I'll just log in first off. So what it will do is it will show you, you know, the different brands and whether they are currently running ads on TikTok or not. So you can see here that in this case, they ran like heavy ads in November of last year, but not really kind of running much now. So they got a little bit on Facebook and absolutely nothing at all on TikTok. So they haven't run anything on TikTok since June 11th, and they're running a little bit on Facebook. So they're still running stuff now. And if we want to look at TikTok ads, we can see specifically, you know, what the ads look like. Again, I've always worked on the basis that with the number of impressions, the number of days an ad has been running, gives you an indication as to whether the ad has been successful or not, right? So if ads have been running for a comparatively short space of time, they probably haven't spent an awful lot of money on it. So it's just useful to kind of do that. What you can also do is you can kind of collect it. So like if you see an ad that you go, wow, I really like that, what you can do is you kind of create a sort of a bucket of ads that you like, so that you can share those with your designers when you're talking to your team and saying, hey, I'd like you to kind of create me some ads that have similar sort of hook to those, or the similar kind of segue into the actual the meat of the ad, and then the call to action at the end. It's just useful to kind of do that. Yeah, so obviously some of the ads clearly didn't run for very long, so 6,000 impressions over 10 days, whereas this one ran for 35 days and got 339,000 impressions. So yeah, so there's lots of different ways in which you can kind of splice and dice things on TikTok. So again, the thing I like about this advertiser is that they are fairly broad based. They're kind of they're in more than one place. So that's TikTok. They have a presence on Pinterest. I'm not going to show you Mild because they don't actually have a page in Mild itself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the Mild database. So yeah, so I've signed up for the free version of their service, which gives me a reasonable amount of activity and access that I can kind of look at. I can create my own brands, and then what will happen is that if any of those brands send out an email, then I will get notification that they sent out an email, and it will show me like these what's actually been sent out. You can see here, like we're now 5:31 UK time, 3:22 US time, I think is when that so 3:22. So they're about 2 hours behind. So these are the kind of the emails that were sort of going out in the last couple of hours. That's probably the way I would sort of describe it. So maybe in the last 2 hours, these are the ones that have been sort of sent out. And we've got apparel brands, we've got women's fashion. So again, if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we can see that Mild primarily works with fashion and apparel, beauty, shoes, jewelry, and watches, home and decor. So that's if you're in those spaces, then and you haven't heard of Mild or you don't know of Mild, it's mild.com. Sign up for an account. It's great. I love it. It's really been sort of incredibly helpful for me. As I mentioned, you can kind of go in to the back end. You can kind of look at brand lists. Just does a little bit. So if you wanted to kind of do brand lists, you need to upgrade. So let me just do my brands. I don't have any, so that's fine. Yeah, so as I said, I'm on the sort of the free version. So I go back to kind of the home page. I've set up some jewelry brands that I've kind of done work with in the past, and it just gives you the ability to kind of see what's going on. So again, we can see $259 Jennifer Zuna jewelry, Black Friday. Again, what I'm looking for is what sort of offers are they coming out with for Black Friday, if anything. So yeah, so if they're running Black Friday offers, what sort of promotions are they giving? Yep. So in this case, Alex and Annie, they've got up to 50% off site-wide, and then an extra 20% off everything. So I'm like, is that 70% off, or is it just 20? I don't know. And then you've got 20% site-wide and up to 70% off. So again, I'm sure they've got some stuff there that probably needs to be, got rid of, and that's usually a good way of people doing that. So yeah, I mentioned there, obviously Mild, it's got sort of free version, which is the basic, pro version, which is $99 a month, team version for up to 5 members, $299 a month. And then just down here, this is the kind of plans and features. So what you get. So with the free version, you can kind of look at the last 12 months. Whereas if you had the pro version, then you'd get a full archive. So it's like everything that has ever been done. So again, if you wanted to try and build an understanding as to how a particular brand has sort of trended over time, then you can kind of use the full archive, and that's useful in that regard. You've got obviously the ability to kind of save the emails that come through. So as I mentioned, like you can sort of set up your preference. So I'll show you here under settings, you can get a digest frequency. So you can either get one every day, twice a week, once a week, or don't send me any emails at all, right? So I get them every day. It'll show me any of the brands that I've got on my list. It'll show me what they've sent out by way of email. So instead of having to subscribe to the emails of competitors or competitors of clients, I can just use Mill to kind of do that, as long as they're in these categories of fashion and apparel, beauty, shoes, jewelry, and home and decor. So that's Milled. So again, a really cool tool. Absolutely love it to pieces. My next sort of secret weapon, if you like, is Built With. So Built With is it gives you the ability to kind of see what's going on in the background as far as the kind of the tech stack that a particular brand is using. So in this case, I'm logged into the account, so I'm getting more information. Again, you can kind of sign up for a free account. Just gives you more information about the brand if you sign in for an account versus not. So what we're able to do is it's sort of broken down by analytics and tracking. We've got any widgets that they're using, e-commerce, frameworks, mobile, CDNs, payment mechanisms, audio, content management systems, JavaScript libraries, advertising. So again, what I'm looking for is some of the information. So I can tell with this particular brand, Avrani, they are using Shopify, and I can also see that they're using Klaviyo. I can see that they're using Attentive, which is a personalized mobile messaging. So that's for SMS. So they're using Attentive for that purpose. They're using GA. Again, that's probably something that they could take off, because they're, Google Analytics, the universal is not there anymore. So GA4 is something that we would expect to see, which is there. They got the Facebook Pixel, global site tag, the Microsoft or Bing universal event tracking, Google conversion linker, which you need in order to kind of get your Google ads conversion data kind of tied up and all married up in the right way. The TikTok conversion tracking pixel, Microsoft Clarity, which is a sort of free heat map sort of tool that Microsoft provide for you. They've got Octane AI, which is a product recommendation, quiz and zero party data tool for brands. I don't know how you would pronounce that. Octane. Who knows? So this is a real-time chat, kind of, you can chat with clients in real time. Bugsnag, so if you have any problems with your website not functioning, that's where you can do that. Slack, Typekit, Yotpo. So they're probably using the Yotpo review platform, which again, I'm less of a fan of Yotpo and Trustpilot than I am of Google. One, because it costs money, but two, if you decide that you don't want to work with Yotpo, or you don't want to work with Trustpilot, they'll take all your reviews off and you kind of go back to nothing. So it's almost like ransomware. They hold you to kind of ransom. They've got Google Tag Manager. They've got, what else? So Shopify, you can see they're using the Shopify broadcast theme. That's the theme that they're using for their site. Shopify US dollars, ships to China, ships to Japan. So they ship all over the place. Shopify SMS. So again, a whole bunch of Shopify stuff. Not going to go into too much detail with that. You've got sort of mobile related stuff. CDNs, again, like, one of the biggest challenges that brands have is making sure that your site stays up. So if you are experiencing like a dramatic increase in volume on your site, if you're not using a CDN and have that kind of load balancing set up, you could end up with people kind of complaining that they can't actually buy anything from you because your site's not working. And I've always kind of maintained that if you have that situation, if you have a situation where the site's not working, not only will it be a bad experience for them like now, there's every likelihood that they will never come back to your site again, right? Because they go, well, I'm not going to go back there because the site's broken. So honestly, like, if you're going to do sort of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you need to lock your site down once you get to probably the beginning of November. Like, you just need to literally don't do any more development on the site. Just lock it up until after the event. And then once you've kind of done that, then you can open up the code base and do a bit more work. But don't ever do that. Don't ever kind of, like run changes on your site kind of like as Black Friday's on, because you could end up with like a major problem. And obviously a CDN, it stores versions of your site all over the place. So rather than having to kind of go to the one site to get it, right? I'd almost liken it. The analogy I always use is it's sort of like if you're trying to sort of move a pile of stones from one side of the beach to the other, it's like if you have 50 people all lined up, then you can kind of just pass one stone along rather than having to kind of go back to the beginning and start again and move it up. Probably the worst analogy you've ever heard. In terms of payment gateways, so you can see they've got recharge payments, which tells me that they have some sort of subscription model. That's fine. Shopify Pay, Klarna. Klarna is one of those buy now, pay later services. So it tells me that they have that functionality set up as well. They've got Amazon payments, Kaltura, which is an open source online video platform. TikTok embed. So again, they've got the ability to kind of put TikToks on their site by using a kind of an embed code from there. They're using Unbounce for kind of landing page design functionality. So again, useful to kind of understand what's going on there. JavaScript libraries. And then we've got advertising. So Facebook custom audiences, doubleclick.net, which is the Google display network. Google remarketing. So again, that's useful for that. Shows you that they have an element of sophistication on their remarketing side of things. And then when it comes to verified stuff, shipping providers, email hosts. So it looks like at one point in time they used MailChimp, but they're not using it anymore. You have this SPF, Sender Policy Framework, and DMARC. And if you don't have those two, SPF and DMARC, then there's every likelihood any emails that you're sending out won't go where they need to get to. Using GoDaddy as their domain name server. They've got SSL certificates set up, so that's good. Everything should be sort of secure. I'm still stunned how in 2024 anyone could have a site that isn't sort of, it doesn't have an SSL. It just makes no sense to me. And then they've also got robots, text, and so on. So that's built with in terms of specifically for that site. One of the things I really like about Built With, again, if you're trying to sort of let's say you're, like I said, my kind of ideal client, if you like, my ideal kind of persona for a client is Shopify sites typically doing between $1 and $5 million a year in revenue. So one of the things I can kind of do is I have these reports. And again, I haven't paid for a upgraded version of Built With. I'm just using the sort of the free version, right? But you can see here they've got sort of report IDs. So you've got Shopify. So everyone talks about how big Shopify is. So you can see that there are 6.6 million Shopify sites, of which 211,578 are Shopify Plus. So Shopify Plus typically kicks in once people are above 1 million. You've then got 484,000 Magento, 133 big commerce, and then you get down to sort of HubSpot and so on and so on. So again, if I wanted to have a look at Shopify sites, if I kind of click into that, you can see here, like it says download a list of all 4.9 million current Shopify customers. But I think if I tried to download it, it would only give me a small sample because I'm not paying for the kind of full version. But you can see, Seattle Seahawks, Venus, Stereo Gum, and how much money that they're spending on the tech stack, social media, how many profiles they have, how many employees they've got, and how much traffic they have, right? So again, if I said, okay, I want to download the list, it'll kind of go and it'll do. So again, I'll show you this particular list. Or maybe I won't show you this particular list. So while we're there, let's just go back to the Shopify site. So we're still at 4.4 million. So that's how much is going on right now. So yeah, so if you're watching, you got anything that you feel you want to kind of chip in, questions, like just if you have a question for me, just add Q to the beginning of your question so that I know kind of that you want to talk to me. So yeah, so that's that's kind of where we are now insofar as what's going on with Shopify. So as I mentioned, like my plan or goal is to try and continue to build out this database, right? So what tends to happen is that Notion continues to evolve, the kind of the platforms continue to evolve, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of speed up the pace at which we kind of populate the database so that we can kind of do a little bit more analysis. Again, rather than you having to spend all your time trying to go in and fire up Facebook ads library and fire up Google ads library, you can kind of do it all from one place. You can add your own notes, you can kind of do whatever you want, right? So I'm going to show you where you can kind of get hold of Notion. So obviously Notion is available for download at that URL. You can also if you haven't already done so and you're watching on YouTube, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel. That's what I would absolutely love if you would do. That would be phenomenal. So where are we? Where's the Notion one? I'm trying to do this without my glasses and I'm kind of squinting like crazy here. So apologies for that. So if you haven't kind of subscribed to the YouTube channel, love it if you do that. The link on screen there. And then finally, this is probably going to be the most important one. I'm going to bring this down so you can see it. But I would really recommend, if you can, just if you take nothing else from this particular live, take this URL, send it to your friends, because as I mentioned, anyone that's kind of watching this video, whether it's on YouTube or LinkedIn, that URL will take you to where you can kind of get hold of the database that I just showed you on this particular live. It will be free for anyone that's kind of like listening in now or in the future. I'll make sure that the link stays valid for people that don't necessarily watch the live, who kind of watch it after the event. So if you are watching now live, go and grab hold of that now. If you're watching after the event, then it'll be available for you to get hold of it. You will need to sort of just give me your email address just so I can send out the link to where you can get hold of the database, but I'm not going to try and sell you anything. The one thing I would say is if you want to contribute, if you want to kind of leave a tip, by all means do that. What I tend to do is any money that gets left by way of tips for people subscribing, because again, a lot of the people that have used it have found it to be of immense value. They've sent me emails to say, hey, can you add brands in this particular vertical? And we've kind of gone out and we've made sure that we fill up the database with brands that are relevant to them. So if there is anything that you feel would be helpful, from my perspective, it would be useful for me to be able to kind of speed up the process at which I can kind of employ more VAs to kind of do the work of data entry for this. I'm trying to use ChatGPT and AI to try and get some of the data populated automatically. But again, I've found when I've tried to do that, it's not been as accurate as getting it done by a person. So for me, it's definitely, like I said, it's a labor of love. Absolutely love doing it. It's really helped immensely when I'm trying to do some analysis on, clients that I have and who their competitors are, right? I can say within a couple of minutes whether somebody's a realistic threat or not to them. And I think in some respects, like just having that information available has been so valuable in respect of, knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it. So if you do, if you do want to get hold of it, like I said, it's on screen now. I'm going to just go back here. So so we can see that I guess like maybe people on the East Coast have started to go for lunch or something like that, down to 3.9 million. But it's definitely gonna go up. I'm sure as more and more people on the West Coast start to pick up and get later in the day. What tends to happen is people go to Thanksgiving, spend all day Thursday getting drunk and eating loads of food, getting full. By the time sort of Thanksgiving late comes around, people are their families are starting to get on their nerves a little bit, so they start looking for kind of promotions and offers and what have you. And in the States, at least, the majority of the country has got the day off, right? So that's why Black Friday tends to be so popular. Cyber Monday less so. So, certainly I would say, as we move sort of through Friday into Saturday, I think a lot of things will sort of spill over into Sunday. Once we get to Monday, not so busy. And then obviously we have a little bit of a lull. And then we're into kind of the Christmas shopping. And then we're into Q5, which is the sort of period between sort of the day after Christmas and the middle of January. So yeah, hopefully you found this live to be a benefit. I did try and do it on. I did actually try and do this as a TikTok live the other day. Tried to do it yesterday. I sat prattling on for 33 minutes with it without realizing that I'd actually forgotten to press record. So I decided what I would do is I would reprise it and do it on YouTube and LinkedIn. It definitely looks like I'm on LinkedIn and YouTube, so that's good from my perspective to know that's happened. So yeah, so if you are if you are interested in kind of getting hold of the database, as I mentioned to you, I'll leave it on the screen one last time. So that's where you can kind of get hold of the gap. You'll need Notion for that, so that's where you can get hold of Notion. And then finally, if you do find this of value and you want to see more of this type of stuff moving forward, I'm going to be doing more lives. I just need to get a bit more comfortable with what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and how to position it all. But if you do sort of find it of value, that would be great if you could subscribe to the channel. It only remains for me to say thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you on the next video that I create for you. And hope that Black Friday is as amazing for you as it is for everyone around the world. So take care. Bye for now.